how do you build a culture that can sustain not only 26 years, but all this growth?
Scientifically, culture is top-level leadership behavior at scale throughout an organization. This is why I'm telling you, you're the bottleneck as the founder, right? The way you behave is the way the entire team will behave. Your toxicity, your dysfunction, or your level of function will exist throughout the entire organization. The bar you hold yourself to will exist throughout the entire organization.
Hey guys, Damian Stevens, host of MSP Mindset. I'm blessed today to be joined by Earl Foote, CEO of Nexus IT, and he is number 56 just this week, fastest growing MSP in the nation. What makes that really interesting story, I think, is the fact that he's doing this without any private equity. He's done, in the last year, done this organically, has experience doing M&A, but is, again, not using private equity. So MSP owner led and by MSPs for MSPs. And we talk about how he went from 500K in revenue to 8 figures in revenue, how he puts people first and how that affects every part of his business. If you want to hear the adversity and the ups and downs, then you're not going to want to miss out on this episode. I wanted to give folks a little bit of a flavor. I know we've covered on a prior episode, but tell me about how long you've been an MSP.
Yeah, Damon, thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate the honor of coming back again. And you're looking youthful. You look great. So you must be doing something right outside of your podcast. To look good. Let's see. We are in September. We will have our 26th anniversary. We started in September of 1998. So been around a little over 2.5 decades now. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, that's a long time to do any one thing, right? So that's amazing to make it.
For me to think that I've been doing this more than half my lifetime. I started the business, at 23 years old, and here I am, 49 now. So 26 years of my life that I've been doing this. It's kind of wild for me to think about.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure it's hard to separate.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. And like the MSP industry can own you, right? So it seems like a good portion of my life has been dedicated towards this. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Well, I want to give some folks listening a sense of this. We're going to talk about a lot of the really cool, amazing things you're doing. But I want to give them a sense for why the heck did you start? And tell us a little bit about how you got started.
Foolishness, stupidity, youthful ambitions, I don't know.
Exuberance.
Yeah.
That, right?
And naivete. I was 23. My brother was 25. We didn't know any better. We just thought it was the .com boom. And we thought we were going to go, build a tech company and be Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs overnight. And lo and behold, we're still working on that. But, 26 years later, but making good progress, So, it was, we actually kind of started, the very first entrepreneurial foray was into a turnkey e-commerce network gear website. It was actually really pioneering. In 1998, a company, my brother and I, we were both poor college students. We had young families. We were working full time, and we each saved up $250 and put it into this $500 turnkey website that in 1998 had direct integration into the catalogs of Ingram Micro and Tech Data. And so for $500, you had a turnkey website with millions of SKUs of computer hardware and network gear on it. And those disties would drop ship, so we didn't have to inventory anything. We figured that it was, if you build it, they will come sort of thing, fill the dreams. And we built it. And a month later, we were kind of like, what's going on? There's like 3 transactions, for like $200, some video cards or something. I don't know, we had no idea what digital marketing was. And really digital marketing was just kind of emerging, And so we really had no idea how to drive traffic to the thing, nor did we have additional budget to do that. The interesting thing was, though, that it pretty quickly led to a lot of friends and family starting to ask us, as they found that out, they started to ask us if we could take care of the IT for their businesses, right? And so we had this quick entrepreneurial epiphany and pivot, into, at that time, managed services wasn't a thing, and really the bandwidth, the platforms, the RMMs weren't there, the PSAs weren't there. We made that investment into, originally into Kaseya in the mid 2000s, 2004, I think, when really, the tool set started to evolve that enabled the managed service industry. But we were doing contract IT services. It was essentially lease an engineer for X amount of, hours per week or per month. And we'd go on site and do service, every now and again, we'd dial up to a server, over a 56K US robotics modem, to do a reboot or something, because it was, of course, painful, right? To try to, a mouse click would take you 5 minutes to process, over those connections. Back then, a good connection was like an ISDN, or a bonded T1.
Yeah, I remember I really, really did not like you if you had changed your wallpaper to anything other than blank for that same reason.
The refresh was
anybody
terrible.
listening can relate to that. Yeah.
It was brutal back then. So yeah, that's really kind of where we got into, the IT services, sort of realm, contract IT, project work, and then, again, mid 2000s, really kind of started pivoting into, the managed services model and more remote, less on site. We do a lot of on-site service where we value our face-to-face relationships with our clients. But of course, COVID has propelled, a lot more remote work. A lot of our clients are fully remote, or they're hybrid. Of course, that's enabled us as managed service providers to be able to service different organizations around the country or around the globe, right? It's broadened kind of the footprint of what we can service, and so we still dabbled in e-commerce, Damon, until about 2012, when we probably had 8 e-commerce properties at that point. So we had kind of this e-commerce side of the business, the IT services, managed services side of the business. 2012, my brother and I decided to split the company in half. And it was an amicable, dissolution of the partnership. We literally just client book assets, split it down the middle. We just had 2 different visions. I wanted a growth organization. He wanted a simple lifestyle business, which there are days where, I envy, that decision.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But so we just split it down the middle, and that's for the past 12 years I've been. I scaled out of the e-commerce businesses because they were, they weren't adequately profitable, and they were distracting us from our core. So I divested those, and then pivoted hard into managed services, managed security services. And over the last 12 years, I've been bootstrapping, rebuilding the business. Today we're an 8-figure MSP. We are growing very rapidly. We can talk about that. Actually this week we were named on the CRN, Fast Growth 150 list at the 56th fastest growing MSP in the nation. We are not currently PE backed or PE owned. However, we are doing M&A. We've done 7 M&A transactions to date, and we have active pipeline of other transactions that we're working on right now, to execute on. Having some of our colleagues join forces with us and build right now a super regional juggernaut is kind of the next phase here. So we're doing some fun stuff and some exciting stuff.
There's a ton to unpack there. Yeah. So congratulations on being 56 on CRN's list of the fastest growing. You're too humble, so you probably won't brag, right? 2-time Inc. 5000 winner.
Three time. I'm going to brag.
3-time now.
3-time out of this week. Yeah.
This week.
Yeah.
Okay. 3-time. Yeah. That just doesn't come easy. So, so I want to get into this. I want to take our time to go through some of this so it's helpful for everyone listening. But what do you attribute to some of those things? Because 26 years and still being around is an accomplishment. And certainly being in the top 100 fastest growing MSPs is just a whole different level. Getting to 7 figures is a dream of many. Getting 8 figures is, not even a dream to some. We'll probably keep going deeper here, but what do you attribute to some of that success to, Earl?
Yeah, Damon, really, I think as a business, I had to come to a realization that the bottleneck is you as the founder, right? Or the founding team.
Yes.
It's your mindset, it's your vision, it's your dream, to what extent can you think big and dream big and then execute big, right? And that requires really, the majority of us MSPs, we started as engineers, right? Like we aren't business operators inherently. We don't know how to run and scale and grow businesses. Most of us didn't go get MBAs. We came out of, some, IS degree or something like that, right? Or, tech, college or something like that. Most of us fell into the industry kind of by happenstance. We might have freelanced a little bit to make ends meet, while we're building families, and suddenly like we have enough clientele, we can go full time. And then suddenly we got like 3 employees, and it's like, oh my gosh, I got a business and I'm no longer like really engineering. I'm trying to run this business and it's kind of killing me. Like it's you and I both know, like when you are that MSP with 6 to 8, 10 or 12, employees, the business is owning you around the clock.
It's painful.
Yeah. 6 a.m. until like 7 p.m. You're doing engineering. You're doing client escalations. You're running projects. You're doing solutions engineering, and then you got to try to do all the back office. Payroll, finance, AP, AR, banking. Sales and marketing at night, and the business owns you. But that's startup land, right? That's the commitment. I kind of like it. It's kind of fun. I still work more hours than I should probably. But I'm at a phase in life too where I'm an empty nester. My kids are, they're adults and they're having fun doing their thing. And my wife, allows me the time during the week to grind, right? To build right now what is my magnus opus. And so, I'm having a good time, and I don't mind working, 12, 14, 16-hour days right now because I like what we're doing, big time vision and ambition, and the team's engaged. We're unified. We're building this together, and we're having a good time. Doesn't mean we always win. Doesn't mean that we don't get our ass kicked sometimes. That happens,
Sure.
And you got to take those gut punches, but that's part of the mindset thing of taking the gut punches and honoring those, and then figuring out how to move on, right, and how to use those as learning lessons. So, Damon, really, it was a matter of me looking in the mirror and saying, if I want to build a high growth MSP, how am I going to do this? And I know I have to learn differently. I have to act differently. I have to think differently, and I've got to learn to market and sell. I got to figure out product market fit. I got to figure out messaging that works. I got to figure out why people buy our services and our products and how that happens and how we meet them at the moment of need or pain, right? And then taking all that knowledge. So going to a lot of industry peer groups and boot camps and 3-day or week long sort of business boot camps and stuff like that, right? So I decided to go from an engineer to turning myself into a CEO. And that, I really started that journey in 2012 when my brother and I split the business, because I was sole owner at that point of the business and said, well, what am I going to do? I have big vision. How am I going to build it? Because I still 14 years into the business at that point, I knew how to operate a small business. I didn't know how to really scale a business and how to really market and sell, MSP and MSSP services, and products, right? So, and I'm still very much on that journey. I've, surround myself with the right advisors, the right coaches. I have a CEO coach who's fantastic. Used to run HP Asia South Pacific for So he used to run Asia South Pacific for HP. He was a GM, so ran a $3 billion business. He's my CEO coach. I have a great life coach. I have other good advisors, and mentors and stuff around me, that I learn from on a regular basis. I have people, Mark Sunday, the former CIO of Oracle, is a friend that I take to coffee every 3 or 4 months and just pick Mark's brain, right? He's retired now, great guy. So I've been blessed to be able to, create relationships, friendships, and get into rooms that I probably don't belong into, but I've been blessed, to be able to have those connections and people who've leaned into me and said, okay, like we see what you're up to. As long as I buy them a cup of coffee, they give me some time and some advice. So, yeah.
Hey guys, today's episode is sponsored by Servosity. Servosity does two things very differently from any other backup and DR company. The first is they are maniacal about testing your backups daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. Last, they're crazy enough to manage the backups and take over 80% of the operations. So it's done for you proactively, but allows you to put your hands on it to be the hero when needed. If you want all of that, plus immutable and unlimited storage, make sure to take a look at servosity.com. I love that. So I know I've spent a lot on personal development. You have as well. For the folks that are listening that haven't yet or that are wondering, give me your input. Like what's been worth it? I know you mentioned CEO coach, life coach, those sort of things. Like what's made the impact on you?
I think the biggest thing for me is getting very real with yourself, Damon. We can dig in deeper and peel back some layers. I'm a deep student and practitioner of awareness, mindfulness, the pursuit of consciousness. I'm a yogi. I'm a hippie. For me, that journey really has helped me understand and know that most of us live in some altered state of reality most of the time. We have this, very biased view of the world and what's happening around us, and limiting beliefs and ego and emotional triggers that determine the way that we think, that we act, that we behave, that we engage with other people. And for me, it's been stripping back all of that and really getting very real with myself, and real with my outcomes and holding myself accountable, and having those people around me who hold me accountable, right? Life coaches and CEO coaches that I meet with every week or every 2 weeks. And, I have accountability. My life coach texts me every single day. I have, every 2 weeks I have a new accountability sort of, check in with him. And, he texts me every single day and I have to respond to him on what I've done, and so, again, getting real with myself, I'm the bottleneck. A business is only going to do as well as you decide to develop as a person, as a leader. And I would argue, as a human being, I think that the more you work to develop yourself to become a good, decent, human being that's showing up in the world and doing positive things, the more likely you're going to be, a great leader, right? And be able to achieve significant things. And you're going to engage people, far better. Like in today's world, people want purpose-driven missions, right? And the purpose isn't just financial outcomes, right? It's what you can do to help elevate people, how you can help elevate your community, how you elevate your clients and all that kind of stuff. That's our mission, by the way, elevate IT.
I love that. Very simple.
Yeah.
Not too hard to remember there at all.
Yeah.
So, for those that are listening, where if I'm not already in multiple coaches and peer groups and all the things, like where do you recommend I start to if I buy into, which I do, that I'm the bottleneck, I'm what's holding it back. How do I change my mindset? How do I become accountable to somebody? Because as a business owner, you could just be accountable to yourself, which is probably the worst thing.
Yep.
In my experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know lots of friends that, for example, are solo founders. There are 2 other shareholders in Nexus now by way of, our last merger acquisition that we did. So I'm not the sole shareholder now in Nexus IT. But I know a lot of solopreneurs that, for example, will form an advisory board or a formal board, a fiduciary board, that because they want somebody to help hold them accountable, and they want direction and that kind of stuff. I think that's a great idea, but you don't have to go hire coaches. I certainly recommend, developing yourself at minimum with podcasts like this, and books. I think that there's so much you can gain from books. Damien, I think I'm a musician. Music means a lot to me. But I made a commitment to myself, 10 or 12 years ago, that between the hours of 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, or on my commutes, that I would be listening to books that help me develop as a person and as a leader. This book right here, The Mastery of Self by Don Miguel Ruiz, fantastic book on just like getting real with yourself. This book, Awareness by Anthony DeMello, a really fun book on, if you listen to this on Audible or, any other format. Anthony DeMello, it's great sense of humor. He's really fun to listen to. Anyways, just, start by looking at your mindset, because the reality is the main thing that holds us back as human beings is our own mindset, right? It's our own belief in ourselves, our belief in the vision, our belief in the company, in the employees. So you got to start by changing your mindset and beginning to do away with some of the reality distortions, the delusions, and working on your ego, your mindset, your trauma, right? Figuring out how to show up and actually lead in a realm of reality, right? That's the way that I feel. So, there's so many good podcasts out now, where you can get lots of good ideas and information. There's so many good books. You don't have to hire a coach, but there's no doubt, like, the two coaches I have right now have been two of the most influential people in my life. They have helped me propel my growth as a human being and as a leader, as a founder, at a pace that I've never had before, because they're evolved human beings. They've been there, done that, and have so much experience and wisdom that they're willing to share with me and impart, and then again, hold me accountable, which I think is super important. Having an accountability partner.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me about how you've managed to grow like this, right? We talked a little bit about growth hacking, but there's a lot to it. There's organic, there's all kinds of things. I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but how are you growing now?
Yeah.
And we talked 18 months ago when everybody was growing, and now not everybody is growing with the economy. So how are you still managing to grow, and how did you even get to that place?
Yeah. So, very good. And it's complex, I'll break it down as best I can. Maybe I'm going to be slightly braggadocious up front, just, again, we did hit that, CRN Fast 150 this week, along with Inc. 5000. We landed on Inc. 5000 at position number 2146, which is bested over about 1,200 over our position 2 years ago. We landed on that list, the 45th fastest growing company in Utah, the 128th fastest growing IT services provider in the nation. So IT services includes, VARs and professional services and MSPs and all that kind of stuff, right? We've also landed, we'll be attending next week, the Utah Fast 50 award ceremony. We're in the top fastest 50 growing companies in Utah on that list. We don't know where. We'll find out at those awards. Last year, we were number 33 on that list. And it's very commendable for the team, what they have achieved. We have a burgeoning tech scene in Utah. There are some massive, unicorn venture-backed tech organizations here that are worth, $40 billion. And, one story, for example, Divvy, that grew from zero to a $3 billion exit in 3 years, right? So for us to get in the ranks of, bootstrapping and land in the top 50 fastest growing companies in Utah, when there's a lot of venture capital going into SaaS, firms, into CPG and that kind of stuff. It's a pretty big feat. Damon, it all goes back to 12 years ago going, I don't know how to market and sell this thing, and I got to figure it out. And so I took it on myself to become CEO, CRO, CMO. And I took it on myself to go learn how to market and sell a business and, in services, and particularly, in managed security, managed IT, managed security, and beginning to get very intentional, stepping out of my engineer shoes and stepping into, my growth hacker shoes, getting very intentional about, a very multi-layered branding and marketing approach. If you look at our organization today, and that's the thing in MSP land, you're not going to run one campaign for 3 months and suddenly, become an overnight success. You have to invest long term, and that's hard in our industry. Like finding the time to simply do it and the money, right? Because this is a low margin industry. None of us are churning massive amounts of profit, right?
Right.
If you're a best performer at 20-25% EBITDA, but the reality is true cash flow is significantly less than that. So, how are you going to invest 8% of your annual budget into branding and marketing, right? That's a hard proposition, but it's a long-term investment, and that's what I've done. I still take a very modest salary today, Damon, for our size. I have friends, building businesses even in our space, or other spaces that are at, a similar revenue to us that take 4 or 5 times more home a year than I do, because I'm playing the long game. I take our profits, and I reinvest into growth, into branding, marketing, and sales strategies. But you gotta go build those strategies. You gotta experiment with those strategies. You gotta figure out what sticks, and then once you figure it out, you nail it, right? And it's very data driven. But you have
before you go a little further there, Earl, I want to back up for a second. You mentioned you're investing about 8%.
Yeah, it's
8% of
about 8% of annual budget of annual revenue into branding and marketing. That does not include sales. Sales is another 8 or 10% in the sales staff and commission, right? So that's which means we have to be performing at a 25, 30 30% EBITDA, so that we can afford to reinvest in the growth engines of the organization, right?
Well, that's what I wanted to highlight. If you're talking about 8% roughly of revenue into marketing annually, right? That's a lot of people don't realize. Even at $1 million MSP, it's $80,000 a year.
Yep.
At a $10 million MSP, it's $800,000 a year. And I think a lot of people, either if they invested it once or twice, then they let their foot off the gas and they don't continue at that level. And it's a massive investment in absolute and in percent terms. And it's just so easy to not. And I just think since I was an MSP that came from the technical bend, there's so many other things you can do with your time and your money. And then there's sales. Like you said, another 8 or 10% as well. So I think I just wanted to highlight, doesn't mean if you throw numbers at it and cash at it, especially, that you'll just magically know. But if you're radically underinvesting, especially as you're growing,
your prospects of growth.
How can you expect to really grow? So I wanted to highlight that because I knew you were covering that.
And radically underinvesting, not only monetarily, but in effort, right? Time and effort. And just maybe a couple of quick thoughts to round this out. And that is, in the MSP industry, Damon, you're not going to sell ice to an Eskimo. You're not going to sell product and service to somebody unless they're in a moment of need or pain, right? It's nearly impossible to go sell, earthquake insurance to somebody who's not in an earthquake zone, right? And that's kind of the way that most senior business, decision makers think about IT and cybersecurity until they have an outage, until they have a breach, until their director of IT leaves, or their board says, "Hey, we got to cut budget, and you got to get rid of the IT and cyber team," right? So you have to be prevalent. You have to be front of mind, which means you have to make a long-term investment into building brand. And for us in today's world, that's it's a multi-layered approach, but it's very content-driven. It's thought leadership. It's content. It's building a trusted advisor persona in your marketplace, right? It's ongoing, PPC and SEO and email drip campaigns, holding events, right? Sponsoring events, keeping your brand prevalent in front of people's eyes, and getting out and building relationships, right? Because you have to realize that people will not outsource IT and cyber to you until they trust you implicitly. This is a trust-based relationship business, right? And so you have to build those relationships. And basically what I did to Growth Hack is I was looking at, man, this has taken 24 to 36 months to build those relationships of trust and then meet them at the moment of need where we become relevant and they say, oh, let's talk, right? So I said, well, how do we build relationships of trust at scale? That's just prevalent branding, right? Today, I think undeniably we are the most prevalent brand in the space in the Utah market, and becoming that in the Intermountain West. We are the official cyber partner to the Utah Jazz. That's part of that effort as well. We are, by the way, the fastest growing and the largest MSP in Utah right now, even outside of the PE backed ones.
Wow.
So, but it's again staying front of mind and delivering on your client experience. So to that front, our team is all in, Damien, on we are building an elite organization with people who show up with elite mindset, elite behavior, and elite performance, so that we can deliver real world value for our clients and we can deliver real world value for our people, right? And to that end, right now we're sitting at 98% client retention rate, 98% CSAT, 63.2 NPS score from our clients. We respond to 98% of our tickets in a half hour and resolve 98% in 2.5 hours. That's across, service desk escalations, NOC, SOC. That's across everybody, all of our functions, excluding our projects because of course those are different. Right. We deliver. We show up, we deliver for our clients. That builds a reputation, it builds trust, and we get referred to a lot of relationships, be from our other clients or referral partners and stuff like that, because people know they can count on us. They know if you're going to outsource IT or cyber, in the Intermountain West, you go to Nexus IT because Nexus IT has your back.
So that is amazing growth, and that helps me understand the organic strategy. Yep. But you've done, is it 7 acquisitions?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about your view. It seems like everybody's either looking to acquire or being, sought for acquisition. Yep. So tell me about your thoughts and what's different about your approach.
Yeah. The MSP space is a highly acquisitive space right now, right? Everybody is, getting hit up by PE or whatever, or other colleagues and that kind of stuff for hitting people up. There's a great opportunity because it's massively fragmented space, right? 120,000-ish managed service providers, managed security service providers nationwide, predominantly, as you said, actually, data would show about 90% of managed service providers nationwide are less than $2 million a year in revenue. And actually more like 70 or 75% or $1 million or below in revenue, right? There's a small segment of us, about 5%, that are kind of above that 5 million, 10 million range. And then you have your megas, the Microsoft, IBMs, Dell's, Cap, Gemini, Cognizant, the big four that have their managed, their enterprise managed service practices, right? So there is a significant opportunity. And of course, there's this arbitrage opportunity of, you buy smaller MSPs at a lesser multiple, you combine that revenue and EBITDA, and it's worth more, the multiple on the EBITDA is worth more once you combine it all, right? So there's that arbitrage opportunity. What do I feel like we're doing different? I feel like we are a people-first organization. We are an MSP-owned, MSP-operated platform right now, and that means we still highly prioritize client experience and people experience. We're going on about 200 PE-owned MSP platforms in the nation right now. And there's a lot of really good people in those organizations. There's a lot of really good PEs doing a lot of really good work. There's a lot that are really founder friendly, that are making the proposition very advantageous for other MSPs. And they have good cultures, right? They're not disrupting, and doing, things that really kind of tank the business. And then there are those that do. We've seen firsthand, PE-owned MSP platforms lose 50% of their clients and their team in the first 18 to 24 months.
Wow.
We are a people business. Our product is people. The way that I look at it at Nexus IT is we build a culture that empowers the success of people where they can do the best work of their career. That is the type of environment that we are creating. For us as leaders, our number one priority is people experience. Our number one priority, and that doesn't mean that we enable poor behavior or poor performance. We're a high-performing organization. If you want to be part of an elite organization like Nexus IT, you show up. That's our expectation. We're building the 1998 Bulls organization around here, right? The world champions. We're not building a run-of-the-mill mediocre sort of organization, and we don't allow mediocre talent to come around. So we hire right, we coach people up right, we retain great people, we give them opportunity, we let them grow within their career, we support them, give them the resources they need. And if they're not aligned and they're on the wrong bus or in the wrong seat, then we have to have conversations about, you're on the wrong bus and you should probably go find something else that fulfills you better, right?
Yeah. Let me back up for a second. I want to get more into culture. I know that you're people first, and that's near and dear to my heart. But I want to come back for just a minute and talk about, because that you've done 7 acquisitions. Obviously, it's really hot right now. There's so much opportunity, but you talked about the economic arbitrage opportunity. Unpack that a little bit more for me. If I'm listening, I'm not an M&A veteran. What does that mean, and why is that such an interesting opportunity right now?
Yeah. So, and this is why PE and family office and stuff are hyper bullish on the industry, as well as it's a steady Eddie industry. It's got good growth prospects, right? Stable, steady growth, and we're not projected to go anywhere. Companies need IT, they need cloud, they need cyber, and for the next 50 plus years, as far as we know, they're going to, right? AI, of course, is going to disrupt some things, but it's pretty minimal to this point, and we're technologists, so we're using AI, to empower our own businesses, and we're figuring out how to innovate with AI, right, and help our clients innovate with AI. So I think we're on that curve. So the arbitrage opportunity. Let's say, you've got an MSP doing $2 million a year in business. They're 70 or 80% recurring revenue. They're performing at call it, on a really good day, like 350 or 400,000 in EBITDA, right? That business is probably going to warrant a 2 to 4x multiple on EBITDA, as a purchase price, right? If the owner's going to sell it or sell, into another platform. So let's just, for round numbers, let's say that, they're doing 400,000 in EBITDA a year, and they get an offer for 3x EBITDA. And, they're going to sell, for $1.2 million, right? Once the business size starts to graduate, the top line revenue, the growth rate, and the aggregated EBITDA. So now let's say you take a $10 million MSP, you've combined 3 other MSPs to get there, and that $10 million MSP is performing at $2 million EBITDA a year, right? Well, now you've got an organization that will probably command 6 to 8x, and if it's high growth, got some really good strategic things going on, great client book, strong contracts, long-term contracts, it may get 8 to 10x on EBITDA. A $2 million a year EBITDA, MSP suddenly is commanding 16, 20 million, right, in the marketplace to trade at. And so, as an aggregator, and I think, we're very different about the way we aggregate. We integrate 100%, and we integrate cultures, we integrate teams, we integrate, leaders, we integrate tech stacks and client books. A lot of the platforms out there are, there's a top co, and then there's just subsidiaries, right? And they're not integrating or, adding value with back office services. And there are some that are. There are some that are doing really great work there. There are those that aren't. For us, there's a value prop. Like when, if you're our colleague or MSP colleague, we want to give you some sanity back because we know you're burning the candle around the clock. So we want to take back office off your plate. We want to take marketing and sales off your plate. We want to give you a normal, 8 to 10 hour a day job, and give you a little bit of your sanity and balance of life back, and take care of that stuff for you. But anyway, so arbitrage, if you go by, if you go by 6 of those, $2 million MSPs, and aggregate it all, and you're at 8 million a year, 10 million a year, suddenly you may have an MSP platform that's worth 30, 40, million or even a little bit higher, right? Because you're getting that accretive value of the stock value increasing based upon the size of the EBITDA, and of course the overall performance and growth of the business as well. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful for the people that are trying to understand M&A in the MSP space right now. And it's kind of funky. There's a good opportunity, and I think it's really exciting for MSP owners, Damon, because our exit prospects 7 years ago or 8 years ago weren't that great. Like, you might think about, oh, well, this is going to be a family business and I'm going to transition it to my kids and I might get some sort of retirement out of it, but it's really going to be, it's not a retirement out of liquidity. It's more of a retirement out of, I make enough every year that I put some investments away. I roll some into some 401k and different investment vehicles, right? Today, MSP owners can create generational wealth, which we couldn't do a decade ago, there is a significant opportunity. You have to build a good business, you're not a good target if you're not building a strong, solid, business. So you have to build a good business. But if you build a good business, suddenly, MSP owners can make, they can make some good money. And like with us, when colleagues join us, they roll stock into Nexus IT. Tell you the last acquisition we did 2 years ago, and we took 2 years to really get through all of that integration. That was the biggest we did. It took some time to get through all that integration and then get back out to looking at M&A targets. But in 2 years, those 2 owners have quintupled the value of their stock in 2 years with us, right? Wow. 5x the value of their stock they brought to us. That's the type of prospects you can think about, right? If you're joining, whatever platform it is. I'm partial to the way that we're building our platform because, we're MSP owner friendly, we're people friendly, we're client friendly. Those things matter to us, and the financial outcomes absolutely matter. We are hyper focused on win-win scenarios across the board. We're hyper focused on our frontline contributors winning. We want them to win right alongside everybody else. They're incentivized to do so, profit sharing programs and all that kind of stuff as well, so that, everybody's winning. I don't believe that business needs to be a zero-sum game. I think it should always be a win-win scenario.
Tell me about how do you build a culture that can sustain not only 26 years, but all this growth, which is wonderful, but growth is its own challenge.
M&A is challenging.
And M&A and integration, and I lost my favorite tech tool, and now I have a different role in this organization. So there's wonderful things, but there's real challenges in there. So how do you approach culture? That's because that's something that's so easy to get wrong.
Yeah. First and foremost, I would say just a word of advice, right? A word of wisdom. If you've never done M&A before, don't go attempt it until you you get some good advisors around you. That's what I did. I got a really good CFO, a really good chief people officer who understands, cultural and leadership philosophical fit. They're a big part of my M&A strategy and team, so that we find the right organizations, the right teams. If you go try to do M&A on your own, the psychological disruption that happens for owners and their teams through an M&A process, if you don't know how to navigate that well, the whole thing can come off the rails, and it can tank a good MSP. Like, if you're a solid MSP, you do the wrong M&A and you can absolutely sink your ship if you're not careful. To answer your question though, culture. The first thing two things that I think that are really important to understand. One is scientifically, and this is our chief people officer, again, he was GM of Asia South Pacific. He's also my CEO coach, but and coaches the entire leadership team in Nexus IT. GM of Asia South Pacific for HP, has a doctorate in behavioral science, behind high performing organizations and teams. He's a neuroscientist, with an organizational behavior, doctorate, right? And scientifically, culture is top-level leadership behavior at scale throughout an organization. This is why I'm telling you, you're the bottleneck as the founder, right? The way you behave is the way the entire team will behave. Your toxicity, your dysfunction, or your level of function will exist throughout the entire organization. The bar you hold yourself to will exist throughout the entire organization. The other thing is that, for me, culture is the space between what you celebrate, inspire, and motivate, and what you tolerate, right? So, and I love to lean towards what you inspire, motivate, and celebrate, right? Sometimes you have to deal with, we don't build a punitive culture around Nexus IT, right? We build a culture where people feel in abundance and flow, where they can do awesome work, right? But you have to set a clear bar. People have to know that, again, if you're going to be part of an elite team, this is what it requires, right? And the team expects you, your colleagues expect you to show up and have their backs and have the client's backs, and they expect to do the same, right? And that means that, everybody's got KPIs they're performing to, that they're reporting on every week. It's, one of our core values is absolute ownership. So you're given a role, you're given duty, you're given stewardship, and you're expected to show up and fulfill, right? And you're expected to report on that. You are, it's your ownership of your role to go to your manager every week in your one-on-one and say, okay, here's where I landed, right? This is what I did. And if I miss the mark, by a reasonable margin, then I'm going to have a game plan of what I'm going to do to correct it. That's absolute ownership. Not the manager saying, oh, here are your numbers last week, right? By the way, yeah, your tickets are getting really old, and you closed 70% of the tickets of the rest of the team. What's going on, right? It's now, if you want to be part of this team, you show up, you're accountable, you report on your performance, you have a game plan to fix if you're not performing. And if that's not, the type of environment you want to be in, because we want people who want to win and, be successful with us. If that's not the type of environment you want to be in, then it's not the right fit for you here, right? So beyond that, it's, and I sound like I'm a whip cracker here, Damien, and that's not the truth. We value people. We have good relationships. We have fun. We celebrate a lot of things. We celebrate all these wins. We have quarterly, reconnect kind of retreats together. We have a lot of, culture support mechanisms. Our teams channels are hilarious, right? All the gifts and the banter and the stuff that goes on there, right? We have all hands meetings every month, and we celebrate things together. We toast together. We're winning together, and we're having a good time, right? And we support and celebrate the things that people do well. We have a core values shout out thread in our teams channel where, anytime that somebody displays a core value, one of our 7 core values, their colleagues can shout them out and say, hey, Johnny did a really good job at extraordinary client service and solutions. And this is why. Here's the story. Boom, 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 right? Every month those get entered into a drawing at our all hands meeting, and then the person who shouted out, so they randomize a drawing. The person who shouted out and the person who was shouted out get a $100 gift certificate each, right? So we do things like that just to support good behavior in the organization. Again, celebrate the good behavior so that people know this is the way we're supposed to show up.
I love that. So you used an interesting word, and probably intentionally. I'm curious. You talked about not just ownership, but stewardship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a firm believer, like if you are, and as leaders here, at Nexus IT, if you've accepted the role of charge, right? And it's not just leaders, it's frontline contributors as well. But, for leaders specifically, you're accepting a charge to manage a team or to manage a function, to manage a business unit. And it's our expectation around here that you have absolute ownership of that. You know exactly what's going on in that team or function all the time. You know where the strengths are, you know where the gaps are, you know why the gaps exist. You have a game plan to fix those gaps, right? It's not me. I should not be discovering the problems in your team, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're managing your team and your function. And
Mm-hmm.
you should be coming to me and saying, hey, look, I found a problem. Here's my idea of how we solve it, right? And then I'm gonna, we're gonna, have a collaborative, discussion back and forth. I might help you tweak it. I might say, hey, look, you got a really good handle on it. Go for it. Run. What do you need? What support do you need? What resources do you need? Do you need alignment across the team? And that's the thing. Like if we miss, so our leaders, report monthly. Well, they report weekly and monthly and quarterly, and annually. But in our monthly leadership meetings, they come in and they report. They report on progress, on performance, on plans, and quarterly on people. So quarterly we do a 9-box talent grading exercise to make sure that we're helping our people advance in their careers, and that we're building people as we're building the organization. So in the plan section, if you miss the mark, so you have monthly and quarterly targets, right, in performance, whether that's marketing or sales related, whether it's ops, technical, services delivery. If you miss the mark, you come in with a plan of how you're going to fix it, right? It's your problem. You've taken ownership, right? So if you think about the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL, fantastic book, very much adopting those principles within our culture and our organization of you've accepted a charge, you take 100% ownership of what happens with the stewardship that you've been given, right? And some of that might be, hey, you're a bad CEO and I need different support, which I'm open to. We have anonymous culture feedback surveys, depending on the team and function, monthly and or quarterly, and then all leaders have anonymous 360-degree feedback on a monthly basis. And so, I have stakeholders throughout the organization, the leaders and some frontline contributors that on a monthly basis tell me what I'm doing well and where my opportunities for improvement are, right? And so I'm committed to, receiving that information with an open mind, standing back from my ego, not having, emotionally regulating, not having, trigger traumas, with that stuff, sure. And going and looking in the mirror and going, okay, I am diminishing the people experience and thereby the client experience through this blind spot of mine or this weakness of mine. And so I'll intentionally with my coaches work on that stuff, right? I'll say, okay, here's what the team's identified that I need to work on as a CEO. And this is, I expect this from all the rest of our leaders as well, right? That if the team has said, hey, I'm having a hard time showing up and doing my job and to the best of my degree because you're doing something as a leader that's undermining that, right? Being real about that, that's your stewardship. You got to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I want to also talk about, or ask you to talk about, I love that you said, get your strategic advisor if you're considering M&A. And, CFO didn't surprise me, although a lot of people are not prepared in that way to enter a deal room and all the things that come with that. And it will be a big distraction like you talked about. But what really got me was the CPO, right? Very few people, even at scale, often invest in a chief people officer, and even fewer, it seems like, especially when it's done poorly, assess the talent. Yet you said we're a people business. We're a people business. I totally get it. How are we only, how is it that the maybe stereotypical acquisition, all they do is look at the financial metrics.
Finances, compliance, and legal. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, right. Why? Yeah. Why is that the case? Do you have any idea? What are we doing here?
Right. In our industry again, and look, there are industries and businesses where there's a legitimate argument for that, right? Like you're strategically acquiring some technology. You're not that interested in the client book or the team. That was like, Oracle's, sort of model, right? It was just, we want the technology. We're not that interested in retaining. And like in the B2B SaaS world, I think the average is on client books that are retained, post M&A, it's like 20% of the client book, right?
Wow.
Which in our industry, that's abhorrent. You are losing all the revenue. So, I mean,
you'd lose. Yeah.
We aim to retain 95% of the people and the clients. That's our aim in an M&A transaction. And, of course, in our industry, it makes no sense. If you're losing 80 or 70%, the deal doesn't pencil out. It's not going to be financially sustainable, right? So chief people officer.
So when did you realize you needed to? Yeah. Was that always something? When did you realize you needed a people officer? Because it seems obvious when you say it, but I don't see it happening.
It's a strategic decision, right? It is recognizing that our product is people, and the way that we win is creating a culture and an environment where our people can succeed, right? Where they can do the best work of their career. And so beyond that, our chief people officer, in his career, having been, run businesses for Oki, for Kodak, for HP, and been a startup CEO multiple times, he's done dozens of M&A transactions. Our CFO has done about 200 in his career. And, the chief people officer, of course, he brings to the table not only the culture, development and people management, people growth sort of, background. He also brings to the table understanding and knowing how leadership teams and cultures can mesh together or not in an M&A transaction. Again, we're not holding right now subsidiary organizations. We are integrating 100%. Our, teams that were part of, acquisitions in the past are part of our team today, right? And so, we have to take it. And in fact, that's where we start our M&A process, Damon. We start just talking about the DNA, the psychological makeup of those founders of that business, right? Does it match? And certainly an organization that brings diverse voices to the table is going to be more successful. But do you at least have commonalities in your worldviews? Can you at least do business together and do so in a unified, constructive way towards the same vision and mission, right? Because if you can't, the M&A is going to fail. You're going to have a massive problem on your hands. So we start there. Does the mindset of these leaders match our mindset? Does their DNA match our DNA? Do their core values as individuals, as people, do they align with our core values as people and as our organization? Doesn't have to be perfect alignment, but is it close enough, right? And is the culture that they built in their organization, is it close to, to our culture? We're not looking to go turn around poor performing MSPs that have a culture that enable poor behavior, right? It's too much work. We've done it. It's way too much work, and it's not worth the investment. So we're looking for awesome MSPs that are doing great work. They're 4 million, they're 5 million a year, they're 7 million a year. And they're not sure how to graduate to that next phase, right? And they've built a good operationally refined organization. The financial outcomes are lining up. They're growing. They probably don't have the growth engines we have. Damon, we're performing at 93.3% growth rate per year right now. We're almost doubling in size every year right now.
That's crazy.
And that's where we add value. We can go to an MSP, owner or owners and say, hey, look, we're going to give you some sanity. We're going to give you some of your time back. We're going to take that stuff off your plate that you don't like to do. We're going to find a role for you that really fulfills you, right? We're going to take fantastic care of your clients and your people. And we're going to help you build, generational wealth over time. We're looking forward to doing some really cool things and building, a really amazing organization together. And that's just it. I think a decade ago, we didn't have vision for building these really awesome MSPs, and I think that, certainly a lot of what we built at Nexus IT comes from B2B SaaS, playbooks. We're surrounded by this ecosystem, the number 2 B2B SaaS ecosystem in the United States right now, right? we're surrounded by this ecosystem of venture-backed tech that is like, we get to see, the playbooks and the way they're building. And a lot of those founders are friends of ours, we're able to connect with them and learn in the ways that they're building, right? And we get to, have this bigger vision of what you can do with an MSP, how you can innovate, how you can disrupt. I don't know if I answered your last question or not there, but.
No, I love that. I love how if nothing else, right? One of the takeaways I got was most people are looking at the books, and then two 10-person or 100-person MSP, whatever size you are, but a 10-person MSP, both doing $2 million. Even if they have similar margin or EBITDA, they get a very different culture, very different levels of toxicity, lack of operational maturity and SOPs. They can be night and day differences.
Yeah.
And, as you alluded to, like if you're having to fix culture, that's a big difference.
Yep.
And so I love that, you start with the chief people officer. I've not just in the MSP space, I've seen too many other acquisitions where there's little to no regard to the people, which is ironic in a people business, right? Yeah. And so I think, you may be setting the bar, but I imagine eventually that others will figure that out too.
Hey, it's one of the things we're doing to innovate and disrupt, and I'm sharing it openly. Like I want our business, I want our industry to thrive. Damon, our mission is to elevate IT, and like that's just it. Like MSPs oftentimes, and I know in this market, a lot of MSPs get a bad rap, and they do because they don't deliver, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
I don't want that to be, I don't want that to be the reputation of our industry. Like I want us.
And I also think
Go ahead.
I think we don't deliver to both stakeholders.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't deliver the client, but we also don't deliver to the employee.
Yep.
Because sometimes I've talked to some that are a little short-sighted owners, and they're delivering to the clients at the expense of their team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not going to work very long.
Yeah, and that is a hard balance to strike in this industry. And I'll just be transparent that with scale, that's a luxury you create, right? With a smaller team, when you're 4, when you're 6, when you're 8, giving everybody some sanity and like balanced schedules when you have to be on call 24/7, right? It is hard. Today, we have a weekend shift, we have an early morning shift, we have a swing shift, so we've given people balance, without having to be on call 24/7. That costs us more money, they're investments we've made, but they're investments we've made into our people's sanity. They're investments we've made into their balance in life, which, even if you're in an IT team in a Fortune 500 company, you're going to be on the clock, 24/7. You're going to be, expected to be on call 24/7, right? At least to some sort of rotation or whatever.
Yeah.
And granted, we have an escalation path of on call, but usually the frontline, shifts that are assigned to after hours shifts, they take care of like 95% of tickets, and every now and again they have to go to a senior engineer, to resolve some server outage, or there's some breach attempt or something like that, right? But yeah, we've taken a very methodical approach to like, what matters to our people, and how do we know that they're valued by this organization, and we've made very intentional investments into them and into building all that. Yeah,
I love that, because if all you're trying to do is a short-term optimization to EBITDA, right, you could really crank those numbers and be much thinner on staff and much more overwhelm the people.
You can be a sweatshop.
EBITDA would go up, and then but the churn would go up of employees, and then clients, right? All those things. I want to switch gears for a minute and ask you some of the questions I want to make sure to ask every. I want to get your input. What's your biggest lesson?
Boy, that's a big loaded question. What's my biggest lesson? I think my biggest lesson as a founder, as a CEO, as an MSP owner, is you need, and this does come from my chief people officer, my CEO coach. Believe in your story. Don't drink your own Kool-Aid. Have enough presence of awareness and lack of ego to know that you aren't all that, right? Like stay grounded, stay humble, you're just a part of the team, and you're an important part of the team, and they're an important part of the team as well, right?
Yeah.
And the more you can have good, deep connections with your people, you can value them, you can value their families. Like Damon, it means a lot to me to be able to employ people to provide livings for their families, to be able to pay for kids' soccer and dance and colleges. We take that stuff seriously, right? And so, yeah, I mean, just coming back around, stay grounded, stay humble, even with success, you're just another human being. And in the end, we all end up, 6 feet under, right? And we don't take the money with us. So, the money can create other opportunities and experiences in this life. And that's another thing. I'm not about collecting material possessions. I'm about collecting experiences. That's I guess, call it the philosophical Buddhist minimalist in me. But anyways, just, stay grounded, make sure you believe, that your team knows you believe, that you have a real vision, that, you believe in them and yourself to be able to execute and deliver on that vision. But don't get too caught up in your own story of hype. You have to spin a story of hype to build that trusted advisor persona. That's part of these awards. And it's part of giving the team an opportunity to win, to celebrate, to say, man, we worked our asses off for this year, and look what we did. Like, we did some really cool stuff, right? Our team's proud of what they're doing, but at the same time, we're grounded, and we know we have a lot of work to do. Like, we're not there yet. We haven't arrived, and nor have you as a leader or an individual.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
If you had one thing to do differently, what would that be?
I've thought about this before. I think the first decade of being an entrepreneur was rough. I went from being, a civil engineer to being an IT engineer to running a business. And I was in college full time. Had a family. I was 23. If I've had something to do over again, I would have got into industry for 3 to 5 years, learned the industry, worked my way through some ranks, and then made the transition into entrepreneurship, because I got the shit kicked out of me for the first decade,
I can relate to that.
I made a lot of mistakes, and financially it was rough, I mean, I ended up in bankruptcy, 27, 28 years old, I didn't know the first thing about managing personal finances, let alone business finances, right? And we had some fraud that came along, so we had some fraud and some embezzlement that came along that stuck us with, some 6-figure, debt, and I had to declare bankruptcy, So had I had the opportunity to go learn the industry and business more, I've had to learn a lot of hard business lessons the hard way that I could have learned within the ranks. Because I had barely had any sort of, real corporate job, I mean, I was working full time, but I was working full time in small civil engineering firms, like of 6 people, 12 people. I hadn't learned business in any way whatsoever. So I went to the school of hard knocks for that, and I'd probably change that. Yeah.
Yeah. What's a common myth about running an MSP that you'd like to debunk?
I think that this may be a little unconventional. Predominantly, the language I hear by MSP owners around the country is very negative about their experiences as MSP owners and operators. It is a challenging industry. It can own you. There is no doubt. It can own your time, your family time, your personal time, and building people operations and dealing with clients in a space that is potentially predispositioned against you, because technology is imperfect, and oftentimes we're in the crosshairs. Sometimes we're at fault. Sometimes we're not at fault. It's the technology. But the client doesn't know how to differentiate
either
that.
way.
Yeah. They don't know how to differentiate that. If you go down, you get hacked. It's like, it doesn't matter that somebody opened up that dumb email with the UPS, attachment and got the organization hacked. It's your fault, right?
Right.
So predominantly, I think that I hear a lot of negative self-talk in the industry as I go to conferences and, peer groups and all that kind of stuff. The myth I'd like to debunk is you can have a hell of a lot of fun. You can build an awesome organization. You can build a good organization that does good work. We're retaining 98% of our clients, 98% CSAT, right? Like, we're doing good work that our clients appreciate. And if you read our reviews and stuff, I mean, we have some glowing accolades out there, right? And our team, same sort of feedback. It's mindset, Damien. The way you choose, that the negative self-talk you give yourself is going to manifest the experience that you have, right? If you talk to yourself about, I'm building an awesome business, I'm adding real value, we're doing meaningful work for our clients, we're creating meaningful outcomes for our people, we're creating meaningful outcomes for ourselves, we're on a mission, we're doing awesome stuff, right? And we're building a good, thriving organization, that becomes your reality, right? And that isn't 100% truth all the time, of course not. That life is never perfect, right? But the more you aim for it, the more it becomes your reality, and that is more and more our reality today. So your mindset matters, right?
Yeah.
The story you tell yourself matters.
Obviously, I'm inclined to agree with that.
Yeah.
Was there a turning point on mindset for you, or something that you gleaned from that?
Yeah. I think I had that epiphany, early on in my solopreneur, journey 12 years ago, as I started to go to some, and actually MSP, boot camps, right? Some of our industry conferences and stuff like that. As I started to go to some of those 3-year conferences, and I started to hear some of the motivational speakers, and get exposed to, some of the, thought leaders out there. It's like, okay, these people are thinking different than me. I'm thinking like a loser, right? I'm thinking like a loser. They're thinking like winners. And what do I got to do to shift and change and be in those shoes, right? It was about 12 years ago, and we'd built a decent company to that point, my brother and I. We'd grown quite well, by word of mouth. We had a good reputation. We were in a smaller market at that time, in a mountain ski community in Park City, and we were the dominant force there at that time. So we'd done quite well, but it was graduating, that just realizing, like, getting real with myself of I'm self-defeating on many levels, and most of that is the story I'm telling myself, my limiting beliefs, the bullshit that I say, to myself in my head with this monkey, hamster wheel that goes around all the time, right? The monkey mind, Buddhists call it, right?
That's right.
So if you can get that monkey mind, that hamster wheel, to start spinning positive narrative, about yourself, about your team, about your clients, about your industry, about, your growth prospects and the vision and mission, you'll start to manifest that reality, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. What's something you're looking forward to with all that's going on in your business, all the growth, all the change, all the things you've changed your mindset around? There's so much going on. I'm curious, what's one of the things you're looking forward to?
It's classified. we'll be doing.
What's one thing you can share?
Let's see. What's one thing I'm looking forward to in business? We're working on some big stuff, Damien, and again, I'm telling you that we're talking to multiple colleagues right now about bringing them on with our organization and stuff like that in regional markets. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to. We've had a very ambitious strategic plan that we've been executing for the last number of years. With the current market conditions, we'd slowed that quite a bit. Again, we haven't done M&A for 2 years. Getting bank debt hasn't been the right instrument at the moment with interest rates where they're at. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to building not only our organic growth engines, but the inorganic, and really executing on the long-term strategic plan of becoming that super regional juggernaut. That's where my focus and my energy and my that's what's fueling me right now. That's where my purpose is at.
Yeah, doing that without private equity is just a whole nother level of challenge there.
Not easy. Not easy. Yeah.
Well, you were kind enough to share some books already, but what's the number one book you would recommend to anybody listening, building an MSP and getting their mindset right? What book stands out to you?
That's a really good question. Let me think about that. I think one of my favorite business books of all time is Winner's Dream by Bill McDermott. Bill was CEO of SAP for some time. It's a very inspiring story. Bill grew up lower class in New England. I'm trying to remember if it was like Philadelphia or if it was in New York. I forget. But anyways, grew up with a maybe lower middle class family. Didn't grow up with privilege, and really taught himself to apply himself to have a winning mindset. He was a salesman, right? Taught himself to sell, worked himself, wake up way up through the ranks, and ultimately became, CEO of a global 100 organization, right? It's a very inspiring story, and just I really identify with Bill's story and the way he shares it. It's very grounded, humble, down to earth, very relatable as a person, even as a global CEO, right? So I really like that book. I definitely recommend it to everybody. Winner's Dream by Bill McDermott. Yeah.
Winner's Dream by Bill McDermott. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to talk to you all day, but you have a busy MSP to grow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Earl. And if you don't mind, share, how should folks listening reach out to you? What's the best way to find you on the socials, connect with you?
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Yeah, LinkedIn is where I'm most active. So just look up Earl Foote, Nexus IT on LinkedIn. Quite a bit on Instagram as well. I'm Base Slapping CEO on Instagram. A little bit fun there. Not all professional. That. Yeah. I do play bass in a band, in a rock band with tech execs and tech founders, right? But
90 proof, right?
90 proof. You got
there
it right.
Go. All right, got to plug 90 proof.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep. So that's the best way. I have a podcast as well called Tech Beat, where leaders learn, innovate, and grow, and I interview other founders. Basically, I love founder stories. I love those early beginnings as like childhood and formative years, and then how do you become a founder, and then sharing your greatest growth stories, right, and lessons. So that's what Tech Beat's all about. So you can look that up. It's on all major podcast platforms as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, find him on LinkedIn, find him on his podcast, or find him at the latest cool gig playing with 90 proof. So thank you so much for being here, Earl. It's been my honor and pleasure.
Thanks, Damon. It's been a lot of fun.